Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together as friends, as citizens of Walton County, and do the business of this great county. We thank you for this glorious day you have given us, for the sunshine and the cool breeze of fall and autumn in the air. We ask your blessing, Lord, upon all those who serve us, whether it's in the military, our fire department, our police department, those that take care of us and put their lives in peril every day. We thank you for them. We ask you to bless their families. And if there's anyone here that needs your special touch of guidance and love, we ask that you shower down on them your grace. And all these things we ask. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call this meeting to order, and we're going to go a little bit unusual. We have a special guest to recognize, but in doing so, the first thing we have is we have a resolution to honor him, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Jones to make a motion to adopt the resolution, and then have you make a presentation for us here.
Okay. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we recognize Garrett McDonald for his National High School Rodeo Championship in Wyoming this summer, and I make a motion that we accept this, and then can I read it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Whereas the Walton County Board of County Commissioners has been made aware that Garrett McDonald and partner Luke Taylor won the National High School Rodeo Championship in Rock Springs, Wyoming in July of 2015, and whereas Garrett is a 2015 Walton High School graduate and is the son of Kyle and Kim McDonald, and whereas Garrett began roping competitions when he was only 10 years old, pairing with Luke Taylor from Kinston, Alabama, and whereas Garrett won team roping competitions during his 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade school years consecutively, whereas Garrett has won state championships while attending Walton High School and is a member of the Professional Cowboy Association, whereas we all know that Garrett's parents, sister, grandparents, school, and the community are proud of him, and we all wish him the best in the future. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners, Walton County, does declare August the 25th, 2015 as Garrett McDonald Day. Garrett, would you come forward with your family, please?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Please make the presentation. Garrett, congratulations. Parents, much to be proud of. Okay. Mr. Jones, additions and deletions.
Call the meeting to order.
What's that?
You called the meeting to order?
Yeah, we already did.
Good, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the consent agenda, we would like to add the request you approve to allocate up to $125 from the District 3 recreational plat fees for a park bench for the Mossy Head Park. Under the county attorney, we request to add the recension of the final order in the Millington and Comer request for abandonment, and grant the applicant's motion to rehear the matter and set a public hearing before the Walton County Commission after proper notice is given, and authorize the chairman to sign such an order. Under Commissioner Cecilia Jones, discussion and possible action regarding the TDC Executive Director. Those are the additions.
Okay.
Motion to approve the additions, and there's no deletions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do you have any items on the agenda that you need to concern yourself with?
Yes. I want to go ahead and acknowledge that I have filed Form 8B, reference of conflict of interest, dealing with it's on page 44 of the EALs on a payment to waste management, and due to that conflict, I would ask that be removed from the EAL EALs and voted separately because of the conflict.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Any public comment with regard to an item on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, first item is going to be the consent agenda minus the EALs.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now a motion specifically for the EALs.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
We removed the waste management one, so we need to approve it separately.
Where do we move it at?
We took it out of the EAL.
We took it out of the EAL.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, okay.
Yeah, we just need to have a motion and a second to approve the waste management expenditures separately.
To approve the waste management bill. Invoice.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to have Sheriff Atkinson with us here today. Sheriff wants to invite you to a meeting that he is sponsoring. Let him share the details with you. Good morning, Sheriff, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me just a moment of your time. I know each of you have received probably an email invitation from us about a presentation by Mr. Edsel Charles. I don't know if any of y'all had a chance to see that recently. I think, Mr. Jones, you've actually seen him a few years ago. Is that correct? Anyway, Mr. Charles is really an analytical specialist in predicting both growth and infrastructure and things of that nature. The Chamber of Commerce, along with the Building Industry Association, invited him down a couple of months ago, and really just some phenomenal information that he provided about what Walton County can expect over the next 5 years. We felt it was important enough that we sent an invitation to him, asked if he would consider putting that presentation on again. He has graciously accepted that, and so we were opening up to all our Walton County officials. We've got limited seating, so we would ask whoever you deem as appropriate, staff-wise, please let us know, and if you'll reserve some spots. I think you're going to be really impressed with this gentleman. And as I said, Larry, you and I talked about, you had seen him several years ago. He's a really sharp individual. Kind of give us some insight on some of the things we're planning, so it helps us make decisions for the future. But I did want to come and extend that invitation personally to you as well and your staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next item, our June 23rd BCC meeting, we had some discussion regarding the property adjacent to the We Care Park, the 44 acres that's owned by Rosemary Pendry. At the time, the board asked staff to contact the city of Defuniak Springs to gauge their interest in the property. You have in your packet an email from the city that indicates they are interested in partnering with the county. However, that partnership, they were requesting that the county fund the entire project or allow them to fund the project with a no-interest loan to the city for their portion of the project. So we'll bring that today for your consideration and further direction as to how you would like us to proceed.
Mr. Chairman, if we're going to pay for half of it for the county and then loan the city the half, I just say the county buy the whole thing outright.
Okay.
What's the price?
We haven't negotiated a price, but in order to do that, we'll need to get an appraisal. So if that would be,
I mean,
if
if
you want us
we-
to move
you know,
forward, that would be our next step.
I just feel like, why loan somebody an interest-free loan that, and we've gone down that road more than once.
Okay. We will order an appraisal and
So-
report back to you when we receive it.
I mean, no disrespect to the city of Defuniak Springs, but, we know how the road is traveled. So.
Mr. Chairman, do we also need to look at how the city is structured with the Gene Hurley, with that grant they got from the state, whether or not it would require them to have some skin in the game, for lack of a better word, in the purchase of that property to move it over? I don't know how that grant was structured, so they may have to do that. Council, I'll check it out.
We can follow up on that and those details when we're ordering the appraisal.
I'm all for going ahead with it as well, so.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item, Mr. Ed Gardner has moved on in his career and is no longer able to serve in the economic development position on the local Restore Committee. We went back and looked through our previous applications. There were only 3 others for that committee, and only one of those is still in the area. The only one that is still available is Kelly Jo Kilberg, who has just recently left the chamber. She is willing to serve. It might be well to advertise for others to get a broader list if you so desire. But whatever direction you give staff, we'll move forward.
I think we should do that. You know, if Kelly Jo was still with the chamber, I think that would be a good option. But
Okay.
because she's no longer with the chamber, I think we need to just put it out there and see who would like to serve.
Okay, and she can certainly apply
And
if
she
she
can
wishes.
certainly apply.
So-
Exactly.
Is that,
Sounds like a good plan, yes.
okay.
Excuse me.
Next item for your consideration is regarding the South Walton Chamber of Commerce building that's located next to the courthouse annex. Over the last couple of months, we've had some discussions with the chamber regarding our need for additional space in the facility. They've indicated that that building exceeds their needs space-wise and their willingness to move to another location if a feasible option was offered to them. What we have discussed in very preliminary terms is making available to the chamber some space in the District 5 office in the east end of that office, which is not utilized. We have a couple of folks that use it occasionally, but we can work through those. But before we go any further, and we wanted to make sure that you would consider a proposal between the county and the chamber for the county to utilize and acquire the chamber building to expand our space in the South Annex and for them to utilize space in the D5 office. If you're so inclined, we will bring you a proposal for your consideration.
I would also like, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while, the Chamber Foundation financed that building, $4 million or whatever, and then the chamber rented it from the foundation. I mean, you know, this has been so far back, but I think we need some definite, you know, who's got the mortgage, I know we own the land, but
Yes, ma'am.
we need some detail as to how all this money's transpired. I remember Gus Andrews gave some money towards the building for, you know, in his dad's name. So along with getting an appraisal or whatever, I really would like some history as to who owns it, who doesn't own it, who, you know, that kind of stuff.
Okay,
You bring that information back?
we will be glad to.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Next item is from finance. In December of last year, the board approved an agreement with Maximus Consulting for a cost allocation study for the reimbursement of central services or indirect administrative costs. Maximus met with various BCC departments in the early part of this year and prepared a full draft report. This plan was prepared using full costing principles based on 2014 actual cost. We're requesting approval of this full cost allocation and the corresponding allocation based on the application of federal costing principles from OMB Super Circular 2 CFR 200. A certified cost allocation plan is required before the county can request reimbursement of indirect administrative costs for federal granting agencies, including Restore. So this document will be part of our Restore work and the work our consultants are putting together now. We know there's some questions regarding principally TDC and how those numbers were arrived at. We're not asking you to approve any specific numbers, simply the mechanism and the means of allocating those costs so that as we move forward with a number of federal projects, we will have that part of it in place.
So moved.
Second. Motion is second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Mr. Miller.
Good morning. Art Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R. And with regard to the Maximus study, as you all know, I think that the TDC has asked for an explanation from Maximus as to how they arrived at the numbers. For the sake of the people in the audience, the difference we're talking about is $600,000, which is roughly what the TDC paid this last year based on 3% of revenues, 3% of $20 million. Under the new plan, we're talking about something in the area of $1.5 million. So there's a $900,000 difference. And the TDC has asked repeatedly for an explanation. And I might point out to all of you that at no time has anyone from the Maximus organization come and talked with people at the TDC about exactly what the TDC does. So it's very much of a one-sided proposal. And I'm not questioning what they're doing. What I'm saying is I'd like to understand what it is they're doing before you all approve it. And we've asked that that Maximus come before us at our next meeting, which is in October, and explain the process they went through. And I think at a minimum, you ought to comply with that request. I think as a fiduciary on the TDC, I would like an explanation as to why we're going from $600,000 to $1.5 million. Other than, well, it's been determined that the costs are higher than what they are. If they are higher, then fine. But I'd like to know what the answers are, and so would my colleagues. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
While that gentleman's coming up, and I will speak, we certainly, from our standpoint, don't have issue with
I don't think
the
his
folks.
is about the TDC, though.
No, it's not.
Okay. But I will tell the board that Mr. Bagby and I and with Melissa have a meeting scheduled this afternoon to begin that process of answering questions and looking at.
And I certainly understand that they may have questions. If they do, I would suggest that they submit them to you. Maximus was hired by this board. I think they did what we required them to do. But I have no problem with, if they've got a list of questions, that we can send it to them and ask them for, I certainly will go along with that.
Sir, is this about the Maximus study? Excuse me, sir, is this about the Maximus study?
Ma'am, sir?
Is this about the Maximus study?
No.
All right, that's all we're taking the comments on right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Miller, briefly.
I'd like to respond to Ms. Commander's comment. Ms. Commander, we don't know what questions to ask because we have been given no explanation as to what they've done. So to put a list of questions together is really not the way to solve the problem. I think the easiest way to solve the problem is to say, please come before us and let us ask you the questions. Let us respond to what you say, and therefore understand what they're actually doing. But again, there's been no face-to-face communication, and I think that's at a bare minimum what we have a right to expect.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Mr. Bagby.
Good morning, Commissioners. How y'all doing?
Good morning.
Couple of things. First item we have for your consideration is to request guidance on pursuing additional hurricane storm damage reduction core samples. The guidance, you've given us two sets of guidance, and they seem to be in minor conflict here. You told us not to spend any more money other than the ongoing consultant costs and things. And then you also told us to make sure that Dr. Beach had access to the core samples. The core samples that were taken 12 years ago, Dr. Greg Stone from LSU, who analyzed those, died, and we can't determine who has the core samples or where they are, if they even exist anymore. So we want to comply with trying to get Dr. Beach samples of the sand. The only way we could think of to do that is to go out and do 20 more core samples out in Borough Area 4C. That would cost about $60,000 to $80,000. I think y'all have the estimates in front of you as part of your board packet, and we just want to know if you want us to go get more sand or if you don't want us to spend any more money. Which one of those two things?
Well, being we don't have the old sand, wherever it may be, and we have so many people that, have said, well, the sand's not right, whatever. I think we need to answer the question so that we're not, saying, oh, they're trying to hide something. I can read between the lines sometimes. And to me, it's a small amount to pay to get the core samples, and we will have them. If we don't go forward with this project, we may need them in the future because of some event that we have no control over. So to me, it's worth it to spend that amount of money to go out and have the proper samples in our hand, regardless of which way the survey goes.
Mr. Bagby, is 20 sufficient? Because in what I'm looking at here, the breakdown is it's anywhere from between 20 and 40. And then you add in the additional cost of the photo doc lab and the report, you're getting close to $100,000.
Right, and we're not bringing a specific proposal to you today, Commissioner. We just went out and got some pricing, but we're not asking to go for an RFP yet. Before we got too far down the road of spending any money, we just got some quotes. So these were returned not based on an RFP that you approved or that we generated. We just wanted to get a ballpark figure so that we would have a number when we came to you to say it's 80,000 or it's 100,000 or it's 1.5 million. We really didn't have a clue what the cost of additional sand samples would be. If your guidance is to go get more core samples, we will bring you back an RF. We will go through the entire process, and so then you will know exactly what the cost is before any contract is approved.
Okay.
I'd like to say something. We definitely don't need to put discolored sand with shells on it, but can we wait until we see if we're going to do the project, and then before we put any sand, do this? I mean, I'm just trying to think. I'm not against doing the samples, but if we're not going to do the project, do we really need this, and can we wait until, I don't know a timeline on this.
Yeah, and that was my first thought, Commissioner, it was that let's wait and see. But then I thought, we've had so much criticism, and sometimes people, well, what are we trying to hide, So, but.
Commissioners, before, when Dr. Beach addressed the board, we made a commitment that we would get him the samples so that before a determination was made, he could come in and see that indeed it does meet the color scales that we've been talking about, and it wasn't being one of these hide the things. I would agree with Commissioner Commander. We need to know whether we go forward or not. We need to know the veracity of all of the stuff that was from 12 years ago, whether or not it's still legitimate or not. It's a small price to pay to finally get exactly what we would be dealing with when it comes time. And then matter of fact, if we find out that it's not what we expected it to be, it would help us in making our decision which way to go.
Okay.
So I assume we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, if we need a motion, yes.
Well, you'll need a motion in order for him to go forward with this,
Motion.
to do an RFP.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion with the commission? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is the media plan. This was before you at the last meeting, and there were several questions that y'all had, and I believe members of the audience had. We've submitted the answers to those questions. I believe Mr. Irvin has talked with at least two of you on the media plan to answer further questions that y'all had. And so we bring it back before you and request you to approve the 2016 media plan. I know this is out of the budget cycle, but part of the challenge is to do media on 1 October. We actually have to buy it in August, so at the first of the year. So that's why we're asking for approval of this media plan.
And thank you so much for the answers to the questions. I know it took staff a long time, and after talking to John, he gave me a really quick update on media. The only issue that I still have problems with is the Cattleman's Ball, and so I see that kind of as a luxury, and maybe in the future look at how we could spend that, better.
Yes, ma'am.
So unless y'all convince me that it truly is needed.
We'll before we do that event again, we will come before you and try to convince you or take it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion?
I want to thank John, too, for coming and talking with me. He enlightened me on a lot of areas there, and thank you for your input, John.
Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item, Commissioners, is a request to approve the contract with Visit Florida for the 4th season of Emeralds, Florida. You'll notice that this year it's $30,000 less. We're getting a frequent flyer discount. It has been a big boom. particularly for our culinary in this area, highlighting our restaurants and highlighting the fact that we have a plethora of offerings for people to come up and partake in.
I actually saw the one that they did this year. For some reason, I was flipping channels, and there it was, and it was very well done. And and they did tout Walton County very, very good. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. 3 updates. First update, remind you that tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, the morning drive on the Golf Channel will highlight South Walton, our golf courses, and some of the offerings. If you don't get up that early, I think most of us do, but you can TiVo it or DVR it or whatever it is you do to record shows. I think that'll be a great boom and display of our offerings. The second point is I want to thank all of you for the cards, thoughts, prayers, emails. I think most of you know, in the last couple of weeks, I lost my dad, and Jenny lost her youngest sister, and it's just been a tough time for her family, and I appreciate everything y'all have done. And we thank you. Our whole family thanks you. The last item, Commissioners, is for the last, I believe, 3 weeks. My time has been off a little bit, but Mr. Davis and my attorney, Ginger Berry Boyd, have been negotiating a separation agreement for your consideration. I believe that they have reached at least where they're happy, and I'm happy, and I hope y'all will be happy. I don't know if he's sent it to you or given it to you, or
Commissioners, I had actually emailed it to you, I believe, yesterday. What Mr. Bagby's presenting is there's no changes from that I sent you yesterday.
Okay. And I would just ask, it's been my honor and my pleasure to serve you and the citizens of this county as the TDC Executive Director, but it's probably time to do something else. A lot has gone on in my life and our lives recently, and I just ask for your consideration and approval of the agreement as it's written, I guess. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Bagby, first of all, our hearts, all of us, has been with you. All of us who have lost parents certainly understand what you were going through. And this might be a good time for you to take some time with your family. I know you have some, with your dad living in Texas, there are all kinds of stuff that needs to be done on probate and all that sort of thing. Right. So this is probably a good time for you to take some time for you. And because loss of anyone, especially a parent, takes grieving. So hopefully this will allow you the time to do that.
Thank you,
So, and I will make the motion to accept the, what?
It's actually termed a separation agreement.
I will make the motion to accept the separation agreement.
Second, with comment. If the board so chooses and passes this separation agreement, that there be an understanding between Mr. Bagby and us that there would be no personnel actions taken against any employees of the TDC, and that no major action be taken other than what I think is in the pipeline as far as your plan. The word escapes me right now. Yeah. But anyway, and also the upcoming annual banquet or event for the TDC. Other than that, I would just also recommend that you maintain contact with the county administrator concerning the day-to-day activities that's going on down there till October 16th.
Commissioners, can I make one suggestion? since we haven't published the separation agreement, what I would suggest is we accept the terms today, and then I'll put the agreement itself on the next agenda, and that way it can be approved after it's been published to the public. And between now and then, if you want to make changes, obviously you can, but just so we're nice
what was
and
the
clean.
departure date on the agreement?
October 16th. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your service. And October 16th, I know we have a lot of transition, and I think maybe the board needs to decide who we're going to put down there as interim today, and maybe that person could work with Mr. Bagby in transitioning so we would have a smooth transition. So is this now a good time to do that, or should we wait?
We'll take a second motion on that, but let's address this other motion first. And
I will amend my motion to,
well, let's do one at a time. They're two separate things. And I'd like to say to Mr. Bagby, I thank him for the service that he has given to the county. Again, our condolences for your family and the losses. And I appreciate that all of the major issues and goals that we set for you have been met, and that the numbers are records year after year. And I realize you're not a bed tax collector per se, but you have kept what we've given you as mandates to do. You've kept on board, so we appreciate that. Any other commission comments just about this? Then we'll take up the other issue right after that, because I'm going to ask for if there's any public comment. Okay, seeing none, to accept
The terms proposed, and then I'll have the actual agreement on the next agenda.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
3-1, nay. Now, your motion is to, I guess, county administrator, you're put in the pickle here.
wouldn't he appoint somebody?
Well,
I have a
traditionally,
recommendation.
it's been the county administrator that's appointed interim things. So assuming that you're stepping down, I'm going to ask Mr. Jones, does he have someone capable and qualified to go down there and act with Mr. Bagby to help transition this in a smooth way?
Certainly, we have capable people. I would suggest that Mr. Sunday provide the lead, at least initially, just to, because I know he's familiar with it. He does a great job for us, as you know, and we're not offering him permanently. I can tell you that right now. So, but I would certainly be comfortable, and I believe the board would be with Stan, taking some leadership there. And let's have some conversation over the next couple of weeks as to, what you would like us to participate individually or separately, or as our administrative team to support the activities of the TDC. I mean, we're certainly at your disposal.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with Stan, and then in that interim, we can go ahead and advertise and move forward, so we don't leave him down there too long.
Yeah. Now, since we're crossing divisional authority lines, I'll ask for a board motion in a second to approve Mr. Sunday as an interim to work with Mr. Bagby to accomplish that.
Moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion by the board? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Commissioners. That's all we have.
And Jim, from our administrative side, thank you for being a part of the
sure.
a great organization and for what you've brought
It
to
is,
us and things you've helped us learn.
Well, and I want to, I guess, say thank y'all, because I think we've made a lot of progress over the last 2 years. The three goals that all the commissioners gave me, don't make us go to Tallahassee and raise our hand, get some positive control on the finances of the organization, and restructure the organization to be more efficient and more businesslike. I think we've done all three of those, and I think we've done them well with your support. I think I wish we could have informed folks a little bit better of the things that y'all have directed us to do to actually improve the lifestyle or improve the experience of South Walton, whether it was taking over the bike path or things like that. And I just thank y'all for y'all's support. Thank you.
Jim, I was remiss in passing on my condolences to you and your family for the loss of your dad and your sister-in-law. I'm not sure how old your dad was, but mine's banging on 92, so you never know when it can happen. But I'm sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Commissioners. The first three items I have are similar and related. They're each a request to approve request to approve and authorize the chairman to sign final orders in land use matters. Commissioners, our ordinance actually requires us in quasi-judicial matters to reduce your vote to a written findings of fact and conclusions of law, and then approve the order. That is, by the way, a step that is not required by state statute, but it is required in our ordinance. So you will see these now pretty much at every meeting. We're going to try to prepare them ahead of time to the extent we feel like we can on those small and non-controversial projects, so we can approve them the day you actually vote on the project. But the first three would require separate motions in order for you to approve the actual orders.
I have a question. The three QJs that are on the schedule today,
Yes, sir.
they'll be covered?
Yeah, I think we have two already prepared, and the third one we have not prepared because we're not sure how that's going.
But we can get them done.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Commissioner, I say we're going to have them at each meeting. When you're considerate, it depends, because if you make one change or make one suggestion, we'd have to change the order. So it just depends on what happens.
Okay.
So if you would, a motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign the final order denying the request for development order in the Stephen subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Second was request to approve and authorize the chair to sign the final order granting the request for development order in the Lot 8 Neely Business Village.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And the third one is a request to approve and authorize the chair to sign the final order granting the request for development order in the Crossings at Inlet Beach Phase 2.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, the fourth item I have is a request to approve the amendment to the construction contract for the Northwest Florida Commerce Park Phase 3 utility improvements. Essentially, this allows us to speed up the expenditures and for that project, so we can spend as much money as possible before the end of the fiscal year, before the money runs out. So this is an amendment to the contract with the contractor to allow us to do that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The fifth item is a request to approve, actually, it's a request to approve a draft interlocal agreement. You'll notice I have the draft attached. The reason it's a draft today is because this is an interlocal agreement with 4 counties, with the District 1 Medical Examiner's Office and a concurrent resolution. I've made some changes to the one they've used in the past, and I do not know, as I'm sitting here today, if the other 3 counties are going to accept those changes. I kind of feel like they are. I've talked to at least two of the county attorneys, but I would like for you to approve it contingent upon them approving the same language. If not, I'll bring it back to you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And Commissioners, the last item is a request to rescind the final order in the Millington and Comer request for abandonment, grant the applicant's motion to rehear the matter and set a public hearing before the Walton County Commission after proper notice is given, and authorize the chairman to sign such an order. Commissioners, what essentially happened on August the 11th, we recorded 3 final orders that were signed. Unfortunately, we recorded them, and I couldn't tell you why, without certificates of service. There's time periods that are legal time periods that are triggered by that certificate of service when we certify that we mailed it out, and the applicant in that particular case represents to us that he has actually not received the order, so we can't prove that we send it out without that certificate of service. So I'm asking you to rescind the final order, and if they want to bring it back, they'll let me know, and we can do the advertisement and rehear it if we need to.
Is it necessary to rehear it?
Yes, sir. I think it would actually be necessary to take testimony if we rescind the original order.
Well, yes, if we rescinded it, yes, but if we just send it back to them for service.
No, sir, because here's the problem. Once it's recorded, those time periods begin.
Okay, gotcha.
I can't stop that. I wish I could, but I can't.
Motion to approve with trepidation.
Just when I think I'm perfect, Commissioner.
Second.
Mr. Carter, I'm going to save you the attention to detail.
Yes, sir.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Lastly, Commissioners, just a quick update. You will notice that the outdoor events ordinance has not been on this agenda. We have a real issue with the definition. We're working on it pretty hard. There's a First Amendment question we're trying to get resolved, and we'll let you know when we get it resolved.
Okay. Mr. Davis, we've got a series of public hearings. Can we open just one public hearing and hear them all at one time?
Yes, sir, except for the
Bridge loan?
number 6, I believe. I think you'll have to do number 6 separately. Yes.
Okay. I need a motion to open public hearing for the series of items that are either the MSBU's or the paying the debt service fund.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the first public hearing was regarding our request to approve the attached resolution amending the budget to bring forward debt service fund reserves to pay off the note related to the Florida Department of Transportation's construction of the U.S. Highway 331 bridge at the Choctawhatchee Bay.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Public comment. Mr. Deal, are you here? Thank you very much for your bank's participation in this and allowing us to have a flexible structure in order to pay this off. But we appreciate what SunTrust has done for Walton County. Just wanted to say thank you. Any public comments with regard to this one? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we'll tell you that the following number of resolutions are for MSBU's, and in each instance, the rates are unchanged. So the requested funding will be at the same level it has been in prior years. First one is a resolution to reimpose and provide for collection of special assessment in the Imperial Lakes MSBU to provide for construction of impoundment improvements.
Any public comment? Wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is to approve a resolution to reimpose and provide for the collection of special assessment in the Leisure Lake MSBU to provide for construction of impoundment improvements.
Any public comment? What's the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 4 is to approve a resolution to reimpose and provide for the collection of special assessments in 4 Mile Village MSBU.
Any public comment? Wishes of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is to request your approval of a resolution to reimpose and provide for the collection of special assessments in Doggett Canal Municipal Services Benefit Unit.
Any public comment? What's the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I need a motion to close that set of public hearings.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we need to open a separate public hearing for the last item.
Motion to open public hearing on item number 6.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, this request is to approve the annual rate resolution and to impose and provide for collection of fire rescue special assessments.
Okay. Any public comment? Wishes of the board?
Well, that gentleman-
I think that's
I'm
what
sorry.
the gentleman
We'll
wants.
take one up. Please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Cobus Russian. I'm here.
I'm sorry, sir. What's your last name?
Cobus Russian.
Would you please spell your last name for the clerk? Spell your last name.
Russian.
How, sir?
R-U-S-H-I-N-G.
Thank you.
And I'm here on this here assessment on the fire and rescue taxes. We got a statement. It was sent out on the 4th of August. And it says two drillings on one piece of property, which was $150, $75 each one, a maximum of $300. Well, I went up to their office and asked them about it. They said, you got two houses with power going to them. I said, no, we don't have two houses. We got a house and a barn. Electricity's running to it. She said it's considered as a dwelling, and if you had four, it would be $475, which would be $300. That's not right. Somebody needs to straighten them out.
Mr. Rushing,
You gonna take care of it?
yes, sir, I've already got the copies of what you're talking about, and as soon as this meeting's over today, I will reach out to the appropriate authority, the tax collector, and probably the property appraiser to see if we can square it away, because that's not my interpretation of it. It is one dwelling that you pay on. Any outbuildings you may have, I think in your case it's a corn crib or something like that. So you don't live in the corn crib. And so I'm going to work on trying to get it straightened out for you.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Rushing.
And
Any
I
other?
had someone call me about that same thing, so maybe a general straightening out, so I'm sure this other people are being assessed for barns.
Yes.
As well. Thank you.
Any other public comment? In the back. Please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Jacqueline Edge, E-D-G-E.
Thank you.
I just want to understand, and I didn't read the letter evidently clearly enough to know that I have the ability to go somewhere else first, but I want to know that there is one MSBU, that everybody is being treated equally, and I did have a question on the outbuildings as well. But is there one MSBU and every dwelling in Walton County is in it, or are there more MSBUs?
My understanding is a series of the ones below the bay are under a separate MSTU, so they're not being considered here. And up in this end, we have Argyle and Liberty have their own taxing districts, but other than that, everyone else is exactly the same.
And how are they treated differently? Is theirs ad valorem and ours is non-ad valorem?
They're MSBUs, but they're a separate taxing district because they are independent fire districts, mainly with volunteers in it. I believe Liberty's is 75, as with the county, but Argyle's is 100.
The other question I've got, it says that the first charge is $75 per dwelling, but then at the end it states that you can charge $300 in 1 year for one dwelling, and you don't have to have any other approvals. That's already approved. It just seems to me like doubling it that many times is a lot.
Right. The ordinance that allowed us to cap it at 300 is where we are each year. And what we've said is that we're going to cap it at $75 for this year. So it's not going to go to 300 this year. It's capped
not going to this year, but it has the ability to go
in
to
the future
$300 next year, or the year after,
or the year after. But currently, with the budget situation, it is not being increased.
It would still have to come back before the board.
It would have to come back before the board. There'd be a public hearing on it. Everyone would have a chance to
Then why put
speak.
it in there that 300 if it's still got to come before?
Because we had to let you know under what ordinance and what the maximum that ever could be charged without another public hearing is. It's procedural.
It's state law, isn't it? Yeah.
We have to
Now,
identify.
do we have a public hearing that has to be done if it goes beyond 75, or?
Yes.
It'll be done.
We don't have to. We can wait until it caps 300.
No, it'll be done. Each time there'll be an increase, there'll be a hearing on it.
Thank you.
Any other? Seeing none, Ms. Skipper.
Good morning. Rhonda Skipper, tax collector. I just want to make it known that the tax collector does not do any assessments, that those are done through the property appraiser's office, and any improvements. So any of that will have to go through Mr. Pilcher's office. So.
Okay,
Just like to refer him to you.
Okay.
Well, I was going to start with you, and then I'll work my way back. But
I don't have any authority.
I know you don't. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, and especially Mr. Rushing's case, he got his trim notice. Now, he got a notice from the assessment coordinator, whomever that is, identifying 2 dwellings on there.
Okay, that comes from the property appraiser's
Okay.
office.
And then that was sent out August 4th. And then the trims went out a week or so later.
That is sent by the property appraiser's office on behalf of all the taxing authorities. And at that time, if they have any problems with the assessment or any questions, that is the time that they need to go and meet with the property appraiser's office so that they can do any adjustments before he certifies the roll to me for collection.
Well, my question is, it didn't show up on the trim.
Okay.
Is there a reason that you
I
can
can't
think
answer
you can't
that.
answer
You would
that?
have to, yes, sir.
All right, I'll go talk to Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Skipper. Any other public comment? Okay, now seeing none, we have motion and a second on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Commissioner Meadows is not here. Commissioner Commander.
Yes, sir. I have 2 things. First of all, I want to congratulate the commission. I want to congratulate the citizens of Walton County. A number of years ago, we went out and asked for a little bitty tax to build that bridge. And that it would take, we estimated between 5 and 10 years or whatever. It's what, 3 years? And we have paid it off. So those who said we would never do it, nanny, nanny, boo-boo, because we have done it.
You got that on the record? Thank you.
So I am proud of what we have done, you know. My second item, I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist that. My second item is, as some of you are aware, I have been concerned about broadband in this county for a while. Economic development to me has been one of my chief goals since I've been in office. And we cannot move forward in most instances. I think people would rather have reliable internet at this point than electricity. That's how important broadband is to our county. Not only for our school system, our public health, welfare, our economy of our citizens, and our citizens themselves to have it in their homes. TDC, it's vital for them. We have such poor connectivity in county offices that my offices, I don't know how many yards from this building, I can't even use a jump drive. I cannot. I'm at the mercy of CenturyLink, and it's a daily struggle for my assistant and my aide and I to be able to use the computer. So I met with Rick. I met with a private citizen that I know knows more about computers than most of us. We brought in the sheriff's department. We brought in the clerks, the school board, a number of, and we have been meeting for months on how do we solve this problem, how do we make it better for all of us. And Rick, I think, has come to all of y'all and talked to you about some exciting news that we have. I'm going to hush and let him take over. But this is an opportunity for Walton County to be on the leading edge. We are having people, I believe Rick will tell you, that have called us from Washington, D.C. saying, what are y'all doing? They know we're partnering with the school board. We will be on the cutting edge. We're being the first, hopefully, to move our citizens forward. There's also a commissioner in Escambia County that I hope to meet with when I get back from a trip I'm going on. He wants to see broadband from Escambia County to Franklin County, the 8 disproportionate counties under the Restore Act. What a tremendous opportunity that will be for these counties to be able to connect fiber together, for us to be connected as far as economic development. So, Rick, if you'll take it from there.
Mr. Wilson, you have the floor.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, County Administrator. And just as Commissioner Commander said, this is a collaborative effort. And we started this process a while back. I think it was in January or February. The board said, look into what we can do to fix this issue because it affects our county buildings. It affects every constitutional officer in this county. And it affects our residents, our schools. So thinking along those lines, we got with the school system. We brought in the sheriff's department. We've talked with the city. We still have some other agencies to talk to. But we said, why can't we work together and build something together, leverage each other's federal funding, and build a system that will meet all of our needs, be on the same network, have redundancy in case there's a fiber cut or something goes down. And so we went through this process, and we looked at the different options. And there was an option where we could run our own fiber optics, $20 to $40 million, be responsible for taking care of the cable. If it gets cut, something goes down with it. We don't want to be in the utility business. I don't think the county does. I don't want to speak for the commissioners. So we looked at some other alternatives, and one of those is a public-private partnership. And with that, the schools, we found out the schools are running fiber. Henry Martin here is with the school system. And we said, Henry, what are you guys doing? How are you getting this accomplished? And they put us onto a company called Southern Light and ITS. And Southern Light is running fiber right now through all of Florida for the Department of Defense and Verizon. So every Verizon tower is having fiber run to it. And with Henry's relationship with them and bringing us on board, we're able to save the county $18, $30 million, depending on the figures that we get, to run fiber in this county, us not be responsible for the upkeep of it, all be on the same network so that we can share resources. So when we talk about being an activation of the bunker, all the agencies in there, if they're on this network, they can pull their computer systems up there. They can communicate back and forth with their departments. And it's amazing because we haven't had that capability. And I won't get too in the weeds, but right now we have 45 megabits of internet for this entire county. There's many residents in other counties and bigger cities that have far greater capacity than that just at their one home. So we're really at a critical situation here. And the biggest thing about this is that this is a unique project because it hits on three core areas that I think the public is, thinks is important, and that's educational development, economical development, and public safety. And this hits on all those. I think we know why we're here. The sheriff talked about when he was up here earlier that population is growing, and it is growing. And the last time we looked at infrastructure was over 10 years ago. So we just wanted to come for you today and let you know that we still need about 30 to 45 days to get all the pieces together. But we have, I think, the funding that we know that we need. We need to tie up a couple loose ends, but we wanted to make you aware of it that in 30 to 45 days, hopefully we'll need some sort of funding to move forward with this because it's such a great opportunity. If we don't take advantage of it now, we'll be looking at that $20 to $40 million figure here in the future. And I don't want to, I know that we met with you individually, but I'd just like for Henry and Josh to speak for just a minute about what it means for them as well, working together and how it'll benefit them. Henry?
Thank you. So we're, like Rick said, we're very excited that we're all working together. And this is a unique relationship. And as Commissioner Commander mentioned earlier, the FCC pulled my E-rate funding, and they were very interested in what we were doing with the county and other municipalities. This is something that Washington has set forth that they want to see the entire county work together and save all the taxpayers' money. So we're very excited about this. Washington's looking at this, and they want to see what we're doing because a lot of districts and a lot of counties, they haven't moved in this direction yet. So it's great that we're on the cutting edge, and it's great that we can all work together and find a goal like that. So I'm happy that education can be a part of this, and that through our E-rate funding, we can help save the county a lot of money and provide fiber infrastructure for our county. So I just want to say that, and very excited about that.
Commissioners, I'm representing the sheriff. But like you've heard here today, technology is great for everyone. For the sheriff's office, we tap into many different resources. The biggest thing is public safety. Along the eastern portion of this county, there is no technology to benefit our officers in the field to help keep our public safe. With that being said, we've all tied together to come up with a solution for you that would meet all of our needs: economic development, public safety, education. We feel that this will meet all three of those key areas for the lowest price possible for the taxpayers. We met with the city council last night. We spoke to them briefly about the project on how to tie the city police department together with the sheriff, and another instance of saving taxpayers' dollars by all of us riding the same CAT RMS system. So with that, I'll turn it back.
Would you state your name for the record, sweetheart?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. Josh Sconyers. My last name spelled Sconiers.
And there's another Sconyers over there from the clerk's office.
And this is Jed, and I know all of you know Jed. Yes, sir.
Okay, Alex, anything you want to say for the clerk, or did you want Jed to make any comments? Jed?
Come on, Jed.
Obviously, you know there's quite a few needs for the county. Unfortunately, there's just no bandwidth at all our county offices, and that's why we are experiencing the computer issues that we are experiencing. So this eliminates all those issues. We've dealt with CenturyLink for the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years total, but really tried to get in touch with some executives, some higher-end people to get some things happening, and it's just the return on investment for CenturyLink is just not there. So they refuse to put this infrastructure in the ground to meet our needs. So we were glad to be able to partner with Southern Light and ITS to where they are willing to put that infrastructure in the ground. They already have $10 million worth of fiber in Walton County currently, and obviously we'll be adding on to this. That's another one of the reasons that we're able to do this for so cheap. Again, Rick said this is probably a 20 to 40, but probably $20 to $30 million project if you do it yourself. And it looks like right now we should be able to get that done for a little less than $2.5 million, with $1 million of that coming from the federal funds. So we're excited about it. I can't tell you how excited I am for Walton County. It was really a mission of mine to solve my issues, but after I got into this and collaborating with the school board and with the sheriff, I'm just excited for Walton County. My issues have kind of went to the back of my mind, and I'm really excited for our county and what we have an opportunity to accomplish here. So without getting into too many details, and until we present you guys something, hopefully in the next 30 days, we're really excited and I'm passionate about it.
And one last key point here. Economic development is so important for this county. FCC statistics say that 39.7% of all new jobs over the last 2 years are a direct relation of broadband being made available where it wasn't before. So there's a lot more staggering numbers that we can give you. But we just wanted you to make aware of where we are. And that, like Jed said, we think we can do this for $2.5 million and maybe even $1.5 if we can get more grants and leverage our E-rate funding. There is a time-sensitive issue with that, so that's why in 30 to 45 days we will need to move forward if the board wishes. We'll answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Yeager, did you want to make a comment on this?
My name is Steve Yeager. I'm staff for the Economic Development Alliance of Walton County, and I just want to add a little bit to Rick's comments regarding the economic development considerations that are in play with this broadband initiative. In addition to equipping our public buildings, libraries, schools, and emergency response units, we will also be enabling the attraction of new businesses and the jobs that they can create. According to the consultancy SN Group, which is a broadband consultancy to economic development organizations, any region that invests in fiber infrastructure is likely to see primary and secondary economic growth 10 times the amount of the investment over 10 years. So an investment that's made in broadband, in extending fiber, can pay huge dividends, 10 times the amount spent in generation of economic development activity. The contribution to GDP is 15 times the amount of investment made. And these are based on records of broadband initiatives that have been done in other parts of the country. The movement to extend fiber service to the far corners of our county could almost be compared to the movement to set up electrical services in the 1930s. It's that game-changing. As we proceed, as the county proceeds with land use planning along the US 331 corridor and elsewhere, we can be mindful not only of the need for things like wastewater treatment, sewerage, and the like, but also the extension of broadband along that particular stretch of roadway where there's going to be a lot of land use opportunities, and we're going to need fiber to be installed along that stretch. The survey by SN Group tells us that 86% of potential businesses would not accept locating to a site that lacks a high-speed internet connection. And probably even more telling is that 41% of the surveyed businesses would reconsider their choice of a location if a region was found to lack available fiber and broadband serving its rural and most remote areas. That, to me, I think, is a mandate that we move forward. I'm grateful to Commissioner Commander for getting this going and look forward to working with this bunch.
Thank you, Mr. Rick. Any closing comments?
No, sir. We just, we look for your direction in the future. We wanted to make you aware of it. I think you all know we met individually how important this is. We'll answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, let me say one thing. My school board hat on real quick. The school district has no choice. We have to do this. mandated beginning last year to purchase all textbooks on, half of our textbooks in electronic form, and that's going to be 100% in 2 years, I believe. Which means those electronic textbooks have to have broadband access, or they're not useful. They have links that kids use, and you multiply that by 8,500 students, you see the broadband issues we have. Not to mention all of our it's not called FCAT. All of our standardized testing now must be done online. And so we don't have any choice. We have to get broadband access to all of our schools. We've made a lot of progress, bless Henry Martin's heart, but we're not there yet. So we're from the school board side, we're full bore into this out of necessities.
And we appreciate the school board because we can leverage their dollars. I mean, that's what it's all about. They have to do it. They've got the money to do it, and we can. For what, if we did it alone, $30 million, it's going to cost us at the most $2 million. I mean, it's a no-brainer for Walton County.
And in closing, this will help the residential community because these telecom providers will be much more apt to run this, what's called the last mile of service through the residential home, because they don't have that large build-out cost. Their return on investment is there. So this is really something that can hit every part of the county. So we want to hit every community center, fire station in this county so we can make distance learning, telemedicine, and telehealth available.
Thank you, Rick.
And the gentleman and I will sharpen our pencils and bring it back to you about the 1st of October, about how much,
Great. Thank you
we
very
need.
much.
I have a comment. I just want to thank Commissioner Commander. I know she's very busy, and to take on this project has been wonderful. And we attended a meeting last week from the Triumph Group. This is a BP organized group that's going to spend, I think I heard, $300 million in the Panhandle for the first year, and if we can guard that money and not let those South End legislators grab it, we could be getting as much as $300 million for 15 years, and it's going to change the face of our Panhandle, and we need this along with water and sewer. So thank you, guys, and thank you, Sarah.
No matter what they do, Commissioner, whoever they attract are not going to come unless we have this in the ground.
So it sounds like we're on the right progress of bringing jobs in.
I think so.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Commander, anything else?
No, sir.
Commissioner Jones.
Just, that we'll be thinking about our selection process. I know before, I believe y'all went out nationally for a TDC director, and then I would like to have a special meeting at some point about reorganization, and it almost seems like we need to talk about that before we know how we're going to advertise. If we're going to separate media, if we're going to privatize, those are the kind of things I'm hearing that we probably need to sit down and discuss. So that's all.
Good.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chapman.
I'm asking the board to deobligate $10,000 from the Lafayette Creek Improvement Project. This is a project that was applied for about 5 years ago, and this was the in-kind contribution from the county for that project. However, it was denied, and these funds are still in that particular project account. I'm asking to deobligate it and leave the remaining money there just in case we're able to reinstitute it, and move the $10,000 from that project into the Choctaw Beach Boat Ramp Improvement Project. I understand Commissioner Commander's a little short on finishing it out as far as funding, and therefore I'm going to be kind and generous to you and give you some money.
And I certainly thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes, the Choctaw Park is costing more than we thought because DOT forgot to tell us a few things that they wanted when we were initially starting the project. So that enables us to finish it out, and we'll let your boat be the first one in the water. How's that?
I ain't got a boat.
Oh, okay. I'll get you a dinghy. How's that?
That'll work.
So is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion and second. Any further commission comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir.
Can we take a break before we get
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
relax. All right. I don't have anything on the agenda this time. We added on for the park bench in Mossy Head, and I appreciate the work Public Works has done out there. Again, my thank you to Mr. Bagby for all his efforts over the past few years. Thank you, sir, for your service. We have next on the agenda public comments under our our provision of Policy 27, a maximum of 15 minutes allowed for this, 3 minutes per person. Anyone wishing to make a public comment? Mr. Riley.
I was unclear whether this was a general public comment period. I'll present it to be so. Don Riley, R-I-L-E-Y. A couple of things come to mind. And one was the comment, it's only $100,000. That'll pay for a lot of things. Only in government could a comment be made, it's only $100,000. Secondly, it's real money. $100,000 is real money. Secondly, the MSBU for North Walton Fire. I understand the budgetary constraints of a lot of the citizens up here, and that's a lot of money. It's, using round numbers, an $8 million service cost on your budget. The citizens in an MSBU are supposed to be paying the full freight for the service that is covered by that MSBU. That's never been the case. It does not appear that it will ever be the case. Nonetheless, when the citizens are paying perhaps at most 1/8 of the cost when they're supposed to be paying 100%, I think it's incumbent upon you to re-examine the totality of the situation, which is to say there are folks that live up here in the north who think, why am I paying $75? Because it's only going to be of no use to me when I have a fire, and my house is already gone because we're too far from any station. I think you need to have a re-examination of the premises of your fire coverage up here in the first place. I agree with folks who say, no reason I should be paying $75 or $25 or anything if it's not going to be doing any good to me. I live down south. These folks are supposed to be paying for their coverage, and I'm paying 90% of it. There are a lot of other folks down south that feel the same way. But you've got folks up here. I've talked to people up here a year or two ago at a group's request, and I can tell you they were unhappy with the situation themselves, and I would urge that y'all examine that. With respect to the broadband, I'm speaking on behalf of the County Taxpayers Association as well as myself now. The broadband initiative sounds like a good thing. It sounds like a very rushed thing. I understand the exigencies of situations. Nonetheless, I think it's time that y'all examine a practice of this commission in allowing commissioners to, every 4 years, build a new office. I understand it's going to cost $300,000 to run fiber to Bill's office, Commissioner Chapman's office. That's absurd that should happen every 3 years. Y'all need to re-examine that policy, and I think you need to re-examine just exactly how much of this money you want to spend sending it out into places that could be perhaps not money well spent. People are swimming out of their homes in this county. We've got some other serious infrastructure needs. I'd ask that you put those in your priority list as well and contrast the benefit that you get from these dollars with the absolute number of dollars that you're spending. Thank you.
Other public comment? Seeing none, we're going to take a 10-minute break before we start in the land use periods. We'll be back in session.
We have for you this morning is a request and discussion on comments on the mining ordinance. As you may recall, a couple months ago, we brought this before the board and had asked for direction. We've gone back and made some changes to that. And this morning, we're asking for your comments and hopefully to bring it back for a public, to initiate the public hearing at the next meeting. But I'll ask Scott Caraway, from Environmental Manager, to come up and kind of go over the ordinance with us, the major changes that we made from the last meeting we had.
The ordinance you have in front of you is a ordinance to allow excess material from pond construction in the general ag and large-scale ag land uses. The size criteria for the pond would be 15 acres in size and an average depth of 15 feet or less. That language is taken from the Water Management District's rules and guidelines. That's their exempt pond construction. Excuse me. And that's just the language that we propose as far as the sizing. We can reduce that to 5 acres, which was what was originally in the Land Development Code, or we can go any acreage that you so choose.
I would be comfortable with 7 or 10, 15. And I guess one of the questions that I'm concerned with is that I know that there are reputable people in this county. For example, I'm sitting next to one of them. If he decided to dig I paid you a compliment. That's what you get for giving me $10,000.
It cost me, didn't it?
I know that when he says he's going to dig a pond and make a pond, he's going to make a pond. And he's going to put fishies in it. On the flip side of that, do we have people that are going to dig a hole so that they can sell the dirt and then never put fish in it? So I would kind of be concerned, is there a way we can track it?
Right.
What difference would it make?
Because if it says in here you're doing this to build a pond, you need to build a pond.
But if they want to sell their dirt, why would that be a problem? I mean, we're limiting it to a very limited area. We're not making this a huge mining app. But if they wanted to dig a pond 15 feet deep, 15 acres, why would we not allow them to dispose of their dirt?
Oh yeah, but I have no problem with disposing of the dirt. I just want them to put water in the hole once they're through.
I think the issue. I mean, I think everybody agrees that they'll be allowed to sell the dirt. The issue is what size. What's the maximum size do we want to allow them to do this without having to go through the full-blown mining ordinance? I think that's the question.
To make sure that if they say they're digging a pond, we want water in the hole. And in that case, I mean, we have some areas in Walton County you could dig to China, and it would never hold water. So how do we make sure there's going to be a pond there?
Do they have to permit through the county under this particular ordinance change that they are putting us on notice, so to speak, that's their intent is to put a pond in there, and that's what they're going to do, to excavate it?
If the ordinance is passed, then the county would develop an application and a permit process for a landowner to come in and apply to build a whatever size pond they so choose. And if that pond fell below these criteria, then it would be exempt and wouldn't have to go through the mining stage and would just get a pond permit from the county.
Okay,
and we would track that permit.
Yes,
but that's not in here at the present time as far as going to get an application for a pond.
It's not, Commissioner, and that's more of a procedural issue that we'll address once it passes. If you'd like us to do it at the next meeting, we can kind of develop that for you. But I would envision a minor development order or something of that nature that doesn't go through the full-blown process. A way for us to keep a record of it, for us to track that. And also, if there's any follow-up inspections that needs to be done, that would be our mechanism to do that.
All right, and as it's presently written, there is no restriction on the location other than it's north of the bay to the state line. Is that correct?
There's no restriction on location at all. It's as long as you're in a large-scale ag or general ag land use, and you meet the criteria for the pond that's proposed in there, then you would qualify.
Well, could you bring us back? I mean, I know we're just talking about it today. Could you bring us back all of the paperwork so we can see it at the next meeting all at one time? I mean, like what the permit would look like.
What an application.
Yes, ma'am. Just make sure we're clear. So you want to see the kind of the procedural aspect of how we would procedurally
it can be a draft,
permit this?
But I'd like to, yes, sir. I'd like to have some idea.
Sure, we'd be glad to do that.
And Commissioner Chapman, as far as acreage, how do you feel about acreage?
Well, to have a 15-acre pond, you're going to have a significant chunk of land there to do it on. That's not a small watering hole. I don't have any grief with that because I think the size of the particular piece of property is going to dictate the size of your pond. If you got 5 acres, you're obviously not going to put a 5-acre pond in there. It'll maybe be an acre if you can get it in there. So as far as 15 acres, I don't have any grief with that because I think the amount of property you have is going to dictate, but not to exceed the 15 acres.
I have a question. With the water management, do you have to get a permit through water management as well?
If the applicant proposes a 15-acre pond or less and is less than an average depth of 15 feet, then they would be exempt from a permit from the state agency as well. So they would not need a permit through the Water Management District.
Okay.
If they exceeded that criteria, then they would need a permit through the Water Management District.
Do
And
they
at
need
that
to
time, then
notify?
they wouldn't fall under our exemption.
Okay, so you don't even need to notify them, so.
No, it's a note.
It's a stopgap to make sure you don't do.
Right, the county, if this ordinance is passed as written, the county would be the only one that issues a permit for someone to build a pond on the large scale.
Would y'all propose a fee associated with that permit?
Yes,
I would assume so.
Because
Of course.
It's going to have to be expected.
The fee would be commensurate with the level of time and activity we would put into covering our costs, basically, to process the permit.
Yeah.
Mr. Nauer.
Good afternoon. I was just going to mention the Water Management District does care if you're going to have a dam that's higher, 10 feet or higher, regardless of how many acres it is. And so it could be a 1-acre pond. If you've got a dam that's 10 feet or higher, it automatically goes to them for review and permitting. And they're pretty stringent on their dam requirements.
Okay, where's the 10 feet?
I'm just saying.
Where's the 10 feet? Where's the 10 feet? How do you gauge that? Is
From
that
the
bottom of the pond?
Yeah, from the top of the dam to the discharge elevation, where you discharge from your standpipe.
Yeah.
From the top to the discharge pipe, if it exceeds 10 feet, then you automatically have to permit it through them.
All right, but what if you got a dam that only has a lower elevation on one corner or the other, so when it got to that point, it'd just flow out there in lieu of going through a pipe?
The ones that I've seen them take charge of, look at the grading on the back side of the dam.
Yeah.
And if the grading on the back side of the dam exceeds 10 feet, they regulate it.
Okay.
And how do they know? I mean, I know I'm asking stupid questions, but I mean, you know, I've got 120 acres and I go in the middle of it and start digging. How does the water management know that I'm digging a hole?
Yeah,
They do a flyover?
I can tell you about 90% of the time, the next door neighbor calls on them.
Okay.
About 90% of the time, because they're worried about their house getting blown away if the pond fails. That's about 90% of the way that they're getting informed about ponds, really.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if that's an issue, we can have that as part of our process too, to evaluate that. If there's going to be any kind of dam or something like that, because we don't want to see anybody's homes be washed away from
Let's make that included in what you bring back for us in detail.
Yes, sir, that's right.
Is there other public comment? Mr. Carter.
Chester Carter. Going back to November the 15th of last year, I had always asked for a 15-acre upland pond. This was approved by federal agent NRCS and state Northwest Florida Water Management Division. I was not asking for a stream-based pond that requires a dam. Henceforth, with an upland pond, you have excessive material. The excessive material that I would have off of my 15-acre pond is needed for 331 highway construction. That's all I had ever asked for. Up front, open, honest, just as government should be. So I don't see why I should be denied, as a lawful ad valorem tax-paying landowner, that privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's what we're asking them to consider, Mr. Carter. Any other public comment? Okay, you're going to bring this back to us in greater detail?
Yes, sir, we will. We'll get it fleshed out, take your comments, incorporate those, and bring it back to you more fleshed out. And then at that time, I suspect we would ask for ask your permission to move forward with the advertising.
Okay.
I still do have a bit of a problem, and I will say it, with it being 15 acres seems to me to be, I mean, I would be more comfortable with 10, but I will go with the majority.
Thank you. Okay. Legislative items.
Mr. Chairman, the first item on legislative is the Stonegate large-scale amendment. This one's a little unique because the initial request from the applicant was a small neighborhood, which allowed a little bit higher density. The Planning Commission, when they heard the small neighborhood land use request, had recommended it be denied. When it came before the board for the transmittal hearing from the board recommended low-density residential, which is what we moved forward with. Today is the adoption hearing for that same low-density residential. 19.63 acres. Tim Brown's here if you have any questions from staff as far as the large-scale amendment, but this is the adoption hearing for this. We get the comments back from the state for no comments, and so at this time it's ready for the adoption hearing.
So wishes of the board.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. QJ.
Yes, sir. QJ items.
Anyone who anticipates testifying before the board on any of these quasi-judicial items that are scheduled, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Commissioners, if you had any ex parte contacts regarding any of these items.
Yes, and submitted to the clerk.
Thank you. And that would not prevent you from rendering a fair and impartial decision.
Correct.
Correct. Anyone have any objections to any of the notices that have been published for today's hearings? Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the second item on our agenda is the Resurrection Church Parish Life Center. This is the major development for the addition of 14,800 square feet. It's in Coast Center mixed use. I'll ask Renee Bradley from our staff to come up and brief the board on this application.
Good morning. Yaley and Halstead Incorporated is requesting approval of an expansion to the Resurrection Church, which is located 0.2 miles south of U.S. Highway 98 on Miramar Beach Drive. The church is on the west side of Miramar Drive. The expansion, as Mr. Dice has said, is 14,800 square feet, and that will make a total of 31,348 square feet for the church. The parcel is on 6.14 acres. Public Works has requested that the applicant enter into an agreement with the All Climate Control Self-Storage that is just north of this parcel, because they're adding a culvert to their driveway as part of the drainage, and this should improve the drainage in that area there on Miramar Drive. They have gotten that agreement, entered into it, and Public Works has approved. The storage facility has agreed to work with the applicant at the time of construction and has given permission for the applicant to add the culvert. Public Works has reviewed and approved this. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the project at the August 13th meeting. One condition, they need an NPDES permit prior to starting construction, and staff recommends approval of this project. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Does the applicant wish to make any comments? Any public comments or questions? Seeing none, what's the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve.
Commissioners, this is one you're asking to approve and authorize the chairman to sign the order.
So moved.
Motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is South Wall Street subdivision plat. This is a plat for 5 residential lots on 1.26 acres with a future land use and neighborhood infill. It's at Wall Street and Walton Rose Lane in Inlet Beach. Just a plat. Any questions? We have staff here to answer if there's any questions.
Motion to approve.
Well, do we have any? Does the applicant wish to make any comments?
Only if you have any questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing none, what's the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the last item on our agenda is number 4, Alice Beach lots E17 and E17A plat. The applicant has requested this be tabled. They are still working on this, and they have asked this be tabled to be brought back at a future date.
Tabled mean that we're not setting a particular date for it?
That's correct, yes, sir.
But it have to be re-advertised.
That's right, correct.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Sure, that's all we have.
Anything else? That's it? Okay. We will adjourn and get ready to go into executive session. So this meeting is adjourned.